Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Her Secret Diaries, a place where stories unfold, secrets surface, and sometimes the truth changes everything. Today's story is one that starts off simple, almost ordinary. A small moment, a routine request, but what followed was something no parent is ever prepared for. It all began on a quiet afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, going through some paperwork. Bills, school notices, the usual pile that never seems to get smaller. The house was calm, unusually calm. My daughter had been in her room for most of the day, which wasn't strange. She's at that age now, where privacy matters more than anything else. Then she walked in. She didn't say much at first. Just stood there, holding a piece of paper in her hand. I remember thinking how grown up she suddenly looked in that moment. Like she wasn't my little girl anymore, but someone standing on the edge of becoming a stranger. "Mom, can you sign this?" she asked. Her voice was casual. Too casual. I didn't think twice. I mean, why would I? Kids bring forms home all the time. Permission slips, school events, field trips. It's normal. It's routine. It's something you sign without really thinking. I reached for the paper, but something made me pause. Maybe it was the way she was watching me. Not nervously, but intently, like she was waiting. Not just for my signature, but for something else. Stood still. I smiled and said, "What's it for?" She shrugged. "Just school stuff." That should have been enough, but it wasn't. I glanced down at the paper. It looked official enough. Printed text, a signature line at the bottom, a school header at the top. Everything seemed in place, and then I saw it. The date. At first, it didn't register. My eyes skimmed over it like they usually do. But something about it felt off. Like a word you've read 100 times, suddenly looks misspelled. So I looked again, and that's when my stomach dropped. The date wasn't today's date. It wasn't yesterday's. Either it was from 3 weeks ago. Weeks. I frowned, confused. Maybe it was a misprint. Maybe the school reused an old template. That happens sometimes. But then I noticed something else. The event mentioned in the form had already passed. My grip on the paper tightened. I looked up at her. She was still watching me, waiting. "Why is this dated from last month?" I asked. For a split second, just a fraction of a moment, something flickered across her face. Not panic, not fear, but something close. Then it was gone. "I don't know," she said quickly. "That's just how they gave it to us." Something didn't sit right. As a parent, you learn to read between the lines. You notice the pauses, the tone shifts, the tiny inconsistencies. And right then, everything in me was telling me something was wrong. I looked back at the paper. There were sections filled out already. A name, her name. A teacher's signature. But the parent's signature line was blank. Waiting. "Why didn't you bring this earlier?" I asked. She shifted her weight. Crossed her arms. Uncrossed them again. I forgot. Such a simple word. So easy to say. But the way she said it didn't feel simple at all. I leaned back in my chair, still holding the paper. "Is this for something that already happened?" I asked slowly. She hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. "Yeah, kind of. What do you mean, kind of?" Now she looked uncomfortable. Her eyes darted away, then back to me, like she was trying to decide how much to say, and how much to hide. "It's not a big deal," she said. "I just need it signed." That's when I realized. This wasn't about a form. This wasn't about school. This was about something she didn't want me to know. And suddenly, that piece of paper felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. I placed it on the table. "I'm not signing this," I said calmly. Her head snapped up. "Why not?" "Because I don't understand what I'm signing." Her expression changed instantly. Frustration, irritation, something deeper underneath. "It's just a form," she said, her voice rising slightly. All the other parents signed it. Then why didn't you bring it when you got it? Silence. That silence stretched longer than it should have. And in that silence, my mind started racing. What had already happened? Why did she need my signature now? What was she trying to cover? I picked up the paper again, this time reading it more carefully. It mentioned an off-campus activity. A trip, a location I didn't recognize, and a section about parental consent for participation. My heart started pounding. You went on this? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. You went on this without my permission? Still nothing. Answer me. Yes, she said finally, barely above a whisper. And just like that, everything shifted. The room felt colder. The air heavier when I asked. She swallowed. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of not knowing. 3 weeks of her carrying this secret. While sitting at our dinner table, laughing at jokes, going about life like everything was normal. Who went with you? I asked. My class. Which teacher? She hesitated again. And that hesitation was the final piece. Tell me the truth, I said, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Not just fear, guilt. It wasn't a school trip, she admitted. Those words hit harder than anything else. What do you mean it wasn't a school trip? She looked down. It was. With friends. Friends. My mind immediately went to all the worst possibilities. Where did you go? She didn't answer. Where did you go? I repeated, louder this time. Finally, she said it, and when she did, I felt the ground shift beneath me, because the place she mentioned was hours away. Not just a quick outing, not just a harmless get-together. Something much bigger, something much more dangerous. How did you even get there? I asked, my voice shaking. We took a ride, she said. With who? Another pause. Another silence that said more than words ever could. And that's when I realized I didn't just miss a form. I missed something much bigger, something that had been happening right under my nose. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw how much I didn't know. The late nights. The closed doors. The I'm just studying excuses. The subtle changes I brushed off as just growing up. They weren't random, they were signs. Signs I ignored, signs I didn't want to see. And now, they were all crashing down at once. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. She finally looked up at me. Because you would have said no. There it was. The truth. Simple, honest, painful. And in that moment, I didn't know what hurt more. The fact that she went without permission, or the fact that she felt she had to hide it. I sat there, holding that unsigned form, realizing it was never just about a signature. It was about trust, and somewhere along the way, that trust had been broken. Not all at once, not in a dramatic moment, but slowly, quietly, over time. And now, we were both sitting there, on opposite sides of something neither of us fully understood anymore. The paper lay between us, a simple form, a single date, and a truth that changed everything. So, if you've ever thought a small moment doesn't matter, think again. Because sometimes, it's the smallest details that reveal the biggest secrets. And sometimes, all it takes is noticing the date. But the story didn't end there. If anything, that moment was just the beginning, because once the truth cracks open, it doesn't close easily. That night, the house felt different, not loud, not chaotic, just tense. Like something invisible had settled between us, something neither of us knew how to move around. She went back to her room, without another word, and I stayed at the kitchen table, staring at that form. I must have read it 10 times. Every word, every line, hoping I'd missed something, hoping there was an explanation that made sense, but there wasn't. It wasn't a school document, it wasn't official, and the signature she needed from me wasn't for permission, it was to make it look like she had it. That realization hit harder than anything else. She didn't just hide the truth. She tried to rewrite it. I finally got up, folded the paper, and placed it on the counter. I didn't follow her. I didn't knock on her door, because I knew if I went in there with anger, I'd lose her completely. And right now, I couldn't afford that. The next morning came quietly, too quietly. She didn't come down for breakfast like she usually did. No music from her room. No rushing footsteps. No last minute, "Where's my bag?" Chaos. Just silence. I knocked on her door. "Come in," she said. Her voice sounded small. When I opened the door, she was already dressed, sitting on the edge of her bed. Not on her phone. Not distracted. Just waiting. That told me everything. She knew we weren't done. I walked in and closed the door behind me. We didn't speak for a few seconds. Then I sat down across from her. "We need to talk," I said. She nodded. No resistance this time. And that scared me more than anything. Because when kids stop arguing, it usually means something deeper is going on. "I'm not here to yell," I told her. "I just need the truth. All of it." She took a deep breath, and then, slowly, she started talking. It began with something small, or at least, it sounded small at first. She said it started with a group chat. Friends from school. People I'd heard about. Names I recognized. But then there were others. Names I didn't know. They're just friends of friends. She said. That phrase, friends of friends, it always sounds harmless. Until it's not. They were planning a trip, she continued. Just for the day, a day trip. That's what she called it. But it wasn't just a short drive or a nearby place. It was far, far enough that if something went wrong, I wouldn't have been able to get to her quickly. Far enough that it required planning, coordination, secrecy. How many people went? I asked. She hesitated. Like 8. Double quotes 8. And not all of them were people she truly knew. Were there adults? I asked. She shook her head. No. That one word sent a chill through me. No supervision, no backup, no safety net, just a group of teenagers making decisions on their own. "How did you even leave?" I asked. She looked down. "I told you I had a school activity. So that's what it was. Not just hiding, lying. I packed my bag the night before," she said quietly. "You didn't notice." That stung. Not because she was blaming me, but because she was right. I didn't notice. I thought she was just being organized, prepared, responsible. But it wasn't responsibility. It was planning something behind my back. "Who drove?" I asked. "One of the older guys," she said. "How old?" 17. Maybe 18. Maybe. That uncertainty made everything worse. "Did you know him well?" Another pause. "No." That was the moment my chest tightened. Because this wasn't just rebellion. This wasn't just kids being kids. This was risk. Real risk. You got into a car with someone you don't really know and went hours away without telling me. I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't think it was a big deal," she said. But it was. It was a huge deal, and the fact that she didn't see it that way scared me even more. "What happened there?" I asked. She wiped her eyes at first. "It was fine. We were just hanging out, taking pictures, listening to music. Normal things, things that sound harmless. But then, she stopped." I waited. Because I knew whatever came next was the part she didn't want to say. "But then what?" Her voice dropped. "Things got different. Different. Another vague word. Another attempt to soften something heavier. "In what way?" She took a deep breath. "Some people brought stuff." My mind immediately jumped to conclusions. "What kind of stuff?" She hesitated, and then she said it. "Alcohol, and more things she should never have been around. Things no parent wants to imagine their child near." "I didn't do anything," she said quickly. "I swear." I looked at her, and I wanted to believe her. I really did. But trust, once shaken, doesn't come back instantly. I stayed with my friend most of the time, she added. We just sat away from everyone. That gave me a small sense of relief, but not enough, because being there at all was the problem. What if something had happened? I asked. She didn't answer. What if that driver wasn't safe? What if someone got hurt? What if you couldn't come home? Her silence said everything. I know, she whispered. No, I said gently. I don't think you do, because if she did, she wouldn't have gone, and she wouldn't have tried to cover it up. And the form? I asked. Why this? She looked embarrassed. They said, if anything ever came up, it's better to have something signed. Just in case. Just in case. A fake safety net, a false sense of protection. But in reality, it was just another layer of deception. So this wasn't even from school, I said. She shook her head. No. And the teacher's signature. Copied, that word echoed in my mind. Copied, forged, planned. This wasn't a last-minute mistake. This was something thought through, and that realization was hard to accept, because it meant my daughter was capable of more than just impulsive decisions. She was capable of calculated ones. We sat there in silence for a long time, both of us processing everything. Finally, I spoke. You broke my trust. Her eyes filled with tears again. I know. And it's not just about the trip, I continued. It's about the lying, the hiding, the planning. I didn't want to disappoint you, she said. That sentence hit differently, because underneath everything, that's what this was about. Not rebellion, not recklessness, but fear. Fear of being told no. Fear of not being understood. Fear of disappointing me. And somehow, that hurt even more. Do you think this doesn't disappoint me? I asked softly. She shook her head, crying now. I just wanted to go. Everyone else was going. That pressure, that need to belong, it's powerful. Sometimes more powerful than logic, more powerful than fear, more powerful than consequences. I get that, I said. I really do, and I meant it. Because I remembered what it felt like to be her age, to want to fit in, to not be the one who says no. But that doesn't make it okay. It's my job to keep you safe, I said. Even when you don't understand why. She nodded. I know, but I can't do that. If you hide things from me, that was the core of it. Not control, not strict rules, but safety, trust, communication. I'm sorry, she whispered, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a quick apology to escape trouble. It felt real, but apologies don't fix everything. They're just the beginning. We're going to have to rebuild this, I said. She looked up. What does that mean? It means things are going to change, I said honestly. More honesty, more communication, and yes, more boundaries. She didn't argue, and that told me she understood the weight of what had happened. I'm not trying to control you, I added. I'm trying to protect you. I know, she said again, and this time, it sounded different, more certain, more aware. I stood up, then paused. And that form, I said. She looked at it on her desk. I'm not signing it. She nodded. I didn't think you would. But this time, there was no frustration in her voice, just acceptance, because the truth had already been exposed, and no signature in the world could change that. As I walked out of her room, I realized something important. This wasn't the end of the story, it was a turning point, a moment where things could either fall apart or slowly come back together, and that depended on both of us, because parenting doesn't come with perfect answers, and growing up doesn't come with perfect decisions. But somewhere in between, there's a chance to learn, to rebuild, to understand each other better than before. And sometimes, it all starts with something as small as noticing a date. If this part of the story made you reflect, or reminded you of a moment in your own life, share your thoughts below, and stay with Her Secret Diaries. Because some stories don't end in one chapter, they unfold, piece by piece, until the truth is fully revealed.
That's all for today's story. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This is Storyova, where your story matters. And I'll see you in the next one.